2020 was a very challenging time for our community. As you may recall, the pandemic was at its infancy. There was a lot of unknowns and a lot of stress. And when that occurred, shortly thereafter, there was the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Madison is about 250 miles from Minneapolis. And our community was as outraged as the communities across the country were.
Totally understand the reasons for the protest. There was anger, and there should have been anger over the murder of George Floyd. But it was sad to see a city tearing itself apart, seeing the downtown area being destroyed, and the dialogue between community members and government officials, not just police, but government as a whole, not occurring. That lack of trust, that lack of dialogue led to horrible things happening in the city of Madison.
It was the very definition for us of a Sentinel event, meaning that it was unanticipated and it was extraordinarily impactful. And we felt that we needed to explore how did we respond, what did we do well, what were areas for improvement, and also have a comprehensive analysis of what actually happened.
So the Madison Chief of Police reached out to us to ask if we were interested in doing a Sentinel event review. It was a way of applying Sentinel event review that we'd never really used before. Usually we're using it for a fairly swift, an officer-involved shooting or death in custody. This was 90 days of uses of force, and Madison was completely open with us. They gave us all their records, all their videos. They allowed us to interview, I think, upwards of 60 officers, and we convened a joint law enforcement and diverse community stakeholders group to really evaluate these things. Madison never once said, well, we're worried we might get sued. They never once said, could this come back negatively on us? What they did was they said, we can't have this happen again. We want to know how to do this better, and we want to work with community to make sure we get it right. Will you help us coordinate that process? And that's what we did.
We had an understanding of what occurred. We had police reports, we had some information that was passed along to us that actually tied that to specific data or evidence was very critical. So to really understand what happened, we had to connect the dots.
I was one of the skeptics. I was going, okay, here we go again. But as I went in and I got to meet the people and get involved in the conversations and hear what we were trying to accomplish, and actually looking at the group of people that were involved in it, I went, okay, this could be different.
When you join a team like this and people get personal with you and they share their personal stories, and they come and they share how much they care. I mean, I even saw a couple of folks share tears. I had never seen that before coming from a team like this. But the other side of that is the diversity that was on this team was outstanding. People opened up, they shared their personal perspectives. I thought they were on point. And I thought you had one thing with this team that you don't see in a lot of places: trust. I think this team trusted each other, which is why I think that all of the work that it has done will be successful as they move forward.
I learned a lot through this process. I learned a lot about the process, about how to do it, about how it can work well, but I also learned a lot about how police in this community function, how they work, what are the challenges that face them. And through the lens provided by this process, I was able to learn also about the concerns and fears and needs of the community. So I was able to sort of see the perspectives from both sides and see how they can come into tension, but how that tension can be addressed.
I think what's been really critical here with the Madison Police Department is that they've come back and said, we took your recommendations and this is what we've done so far and this is what we're going to keep working on. So continuing that conversation is the thing that makes it effective. I think if we had just had the process and written the report and called it a day, that wouldn't have been nearly as impactful.
The biggest takeaway is that we did a process that it worked, and it's more than just a report on the shelf, we have tangible things that we'll be pushing this out to the public so they can see what we did, and then that process to do similar things in the future, I think, is really crucial.
I think in the aftermath of George Floyd, a lot of us felt fairly helpless, and there was no real concrete way to help out. You sort of felt like you were stuck. This was cathartic in a way that there's something that can be done that's positive for the entire community. And I found that to be extremely rewarding, that two divergent groups could come together, take a very hard look at some dramatic events, frankly, and come up with consensus on how to change that going forward.
One way to measure the effectiveness of the process would be, did we complete all the recommendations? But I think that would be a bit of a shortcut. I think the more effective way to evaluate this is, are we going to relive our history? If, in fact, these same confluence events come together again, will we take the same path we took, or will we take a different path? And I'm really hopeful and optimistic that we'll take a different path.